Yo, it's MONICELLO'S reactions, no capping reactions. No way am I here just to flex. Now that I got your attention, please turn on your mention, subscribe, and comment what I should do next. Yo, what's going on YouTube? Today we got this wild ass dude, David, on the algorithm again. Man, they finding more and more shit about bro. Shit, for real, man. This shit is crazy. We're gonna get into this video. Make sure y'all like, comment, and subscribe. So MONICELLO'S reactions, please subscribe. Subscribe. It only take 2 seconds.
Are some updates from the alleged Santa Barbara trip to cell phone evidence to a statement from Celeste's father. A lot more information I want to get into. And to just put it into context, and again, I'm not going to repeat it all here. I did previous sidebars on all this. You can check it out on Law and Crime's YouTube page, where I laid out all the potential evidence that prosecutors claim they have against David. But basically speaking, we are talking reportedly forensic, digital, testimonial, surveillance evidence. And essentially, the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office claims that David was in an illegal sexual relationship with this 14-year-old girl ever since she was 13, that she threatened to expose him, would destroy his career, invites her over to his place in LA, gets her a rideshare there, all the way from Lake Elsinore, allegedly quickly kills her once she arrives. Remember, multiple penetrating injuries. That's according to the forensic report, right, the ME's office. And then reportedly proceeds to sloppily dispose of her body by allegedly dismembering her and buying items online to help with the disposal. Prosecutor.
What? Oh no, bruh. Come on, bruh. No.
Body bag, laundry bags, a blue inflatable pool, that he allegedly made these purchases under a fake name, Victoria Mendez. Brutal crime. Brutal crime. All right. Now, when I say updates, I want to turn to a lot of these, and I'm not going to do it alone. I want to bring on somebody we haven't had in quite some time. Actually, I don't think we've had him on since David was arrested and charged and all of this potential evidence has been revealed. Retired Detective Matt Irvine joins us. Matt, good to see you. You and I had been breaking down this case for a while before David's arrest. But even before I go into the updates, I just am curious, 2 questions for you. A, what do you think of all the evidence, generally speaking, that investigators
Shorty look crazy. Straight demon time. Straight demon time.
Nope. Have been able to collect in this case so far, as laid out in the prosecution's brief? And B, this is an interesting part because I heard Harvey Levin from TMZ talk about it last week, that he says it's almost unusual at this point in the case that prosecutors are in fact laying out a lot of what they have, or almost everything that they have, in this preliminary hearing brief. So 2 parts. A, what do you think of the investigative work, the potential evidence? And B, is it unusual at this point in the case that authorities are revealing what they have?
First of all, yeah, Jesse, thank you for having me back on to discuss these really important and tragic updates in this case. First of all, to your first question, I think the investigation that's been laid out so far has been thorough. It's been outstanding. The breadth and depth of investigation and evidence that's been hinted at so far by the LA District Attorney's Office is truly impressive. And I really have to hand it to LAPD and the DA's office for being willing to stand in silence and take the blows that they've been taking over these last 6 or 7 months, with all the folks saying, what are they doing, or why aren't they doing anything? And it was very clear that they weren't able to talk about what they were doing, but they've clearly been doing a lot, and probably...
My thing is, y'all got the evidence. Just lock this nigga up. Like, it's nothing else that we need. Like, what y'all need? Lock his ass up. Bro, you dismembering little girls, bro. Like, come on, bro. Get out of here, bro. You got niggas in the pen that don't even get to see their kids, bro. Get to see their daughters, bro. Get to see their wives, bro. Get them out of here, bro. You doing all that. You did all that for fame? Oh, we know you. We know you now.
Stupid.
From the moment that Celeste's body was discovered in the Tesla. As to your second question, It is unusual to have this much evidence laid out by the prosecution this early in the case. A preliminary hearing is really just that. It's a bare bones showing of the evidence by the prosecution simply to convince a judge that there is probable cause, which is a fairly low standard, to proceed with the prosecution. So they are definitely front loading their evidence in this case.
And the preliminary hearing is scheduled now for the end of the month.
Basically, what he said is that they need more probable cause to be able to convict, bruh. But I feel like it's going to be way more evidence that y'all gonna find. Y'all got majority of the stuff that y'all got is hard evidence. You feel me? Like from what I'm seeing, from what I've researched and did all that and looked at the videos. You basically got all y'all need. Y'all could just lock his stupid ass up.
Like it was supposed to be last week. And to me, my cynical version of this is there's been a lot of criticism, a lot of commentary, and a lot of spotlight put on authorities in this case about how thorough the investigation is, how accurate the investigation is there a disagreement between the Los Angeles PD and the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office. So to see this potential breadth of evidence, how much they have, in my opinion, I wonder if it's a sign to the public, let us do our jobs, look what we have, look at the case that we're building. All right, real quick, before we go any further, for all you cat owners out there, who doesn't want their cat to be healthy and happy, right? That's the most important thing. Feeding them smalls, that's the key. Why do I say that? Look, most cat food out there is made with cheap video interview for the release of his album that week. He sent 2 additional texts to the victim's phone that day, which obviously went unanswered because she was already dead. After April 26, 2025, defendant never attempted to contact her again. I've said this before, that if that's true, if the prosecution can establish that, that's bad, because if he's going to claim he had nothing to do with it, and he had this whatever connection to her whatsoever, even at the very least a friendship, prosecutors are saying it was an illegal sexual relationship, never tries to contact her again after.
Well, you obviously can't lie and say that you didn't know her. That's obviously her in the pictures and shit with you. So that's an automatic throw out. You know what I'm saying? That's one piece of evidence right there that you're going to lie about. Oh, I didn't know her. I have no idea who she is. You know exactly who the fuck she is. She's in pictures with you.
Stupid.
She's in damn near every video with you. Not music video, but personal videos. Come on, bruh. You wild, bruh.
There's missing, so again, that's an important allegation. Then it says, on May 8th, 2025, defendant returned to the same area in Santa Barbara County, leaving his home at around 11:30 p.m. He returned to the area again on May 31st, 2025. This is an isolated site off SR 154, where the victim's identification was subsequently discovered in January 2026. Additionally, on July 7th, 2025, defendant ordered and subsequently Amazon delivered a burn cage to his home under the same fake name as part of his plan to incinerate evidence. Defendant.
That's crazy. Then you ordering all that shit to your crib? Boy, you crazy. You man.
Cellular activity and communications derived from defendant's iPhone and Tesla, which demonstrate defendant's activities from April 22nd, 2025 to April 24th, 2025, including a trip to Santa Barbara County in the middle of the night after the victim arrived at his Hollywood Hills home. Why am I talking about that? What's the update? Steve Fisher. We've had him on the program multiple times. I've had him on Jesse Weber Live on News Nation. He's the private investigator who was hired by the owner of the property where David was staying, that was allegedly near where the Tesla was found. He was tasked with looking into this. He's currently on another search right now, by the way. But he took to X, and he also added some new aerial photos. And he said in his post, quote, on Friday, May 1st, I spent the day in Santa Barbara County off SR 154 in the area where Celeste's passport card was found by a Caltrans worker. I captured high-resolution drone imagery of the area. Once I finish my current search mission in the Grand Canyon, I will process the imagery through the detection analysis programs we use. The area is covered by license plate readers. The specific area where he appears to have pulled off SR 154 has a gate that is closed from sunset to sunrise, so his car would likely have had to stay relatively close to SR 154. There are trails that lead down to the water, so someone could dispose of a chainsaw or other evidence there. Given how small and weak David is, I do not believe a chainsaw or other heavy evidence would be far into the water. The water is clear, and I was able to see several feet into it with the drone. I have a couple thousand high-resolution images from the area to process. I have attached a few low-resolution preview images to give an idea of the terrain.
Basically, that drone just found everything that he just threw down in that river. Wherever that shit was that you threw down there, that chainsaw allegedly or wherever you did, they found it. Boy, you got to be you dumb as a box of rocks.
Hashtag Celeste Rivas Hernandez, hashtag David. Before I go any further, Matt, you tell me what you take away from that.
Well, the first thing you talked about, his activities in the immediate aftermath of Celeste's killing, I think are really telling, because I think they defeat any argument that this was an accident, an overdose, or even some crime of passion. It really speaks to what the prosecution is alleging in their special circumstance allegation of lying. And
now they about to say that this girl, now they about to try to say this girl overdosed. That still don't give you the right to do what you did, nigga. They gonna ask you why you didn't call the cops, why you didn't call the ambulance, why you didn't call the peoples, why you sit there and just let her just die, and then try to cover up the evidence. Nah, boy.
Wait, which is that he lured her to his home with the intention to kill her. And the reason I say that is an accident, a crime of passion, it would be hard to imagine that somebody would have the presence of mind in the minutes afterwards to essentially stage an alibi for themselves by sending multiple texts to a person that they just killed. And then to immediately, within minutes or hours of her death, drive all the way to Santa Barbara County to dispose of some kind of evidence. Again, speaks to this being a premeditated crime and not an accident or a crime of passion. He was just too busy, too calculating, too quickly after her death for this to be anything other than a premeditated homicide. As to the multiple trips, and I think that also ties in with the multiple online orders that we're seeing evidence of. It seems like in the days and weeks following her killing, he engaged in a lot of activity to try to cover up what he did and to dispose of Celeste in a way that would make it harder for this child's remains to be found or identified.
I'm glad you made that point. I talked about this on a previous sidebar, and by the way, Harvey Levin talked about it too in his own analysis, that look, there's no witness testimony as far as we can tell. There's no surveillance footage of the actual alleged killing. So what happened behind closed doors? And could that be room for reasonable doubt? I've seen cases before where somebody is acquitted of a murder, but actually convicted of the disposal of the body. So it's two separate things, but the fact that the timing of this is key, either, let's say, there was some sort of altercation, something happened in the house, whatever it is, that it wasn't a premeditated murder, she dies, and then either he just thinks so quickly about how to do all this, or it's, like you said, the evidence may suggest this was planned. There was thinking going into this. Although it is interesting, Matt, to think about why not purchase everything beforehand? The bags, the inflatable pool, the chainsaw, why did that all come afterwards?
Well, again, there's a lot that we don't know yet, but I think the timing is critical in terms of, and correct me if my dates are a little bit off, but as I recall, the text exchanges in which she essentially threatened to expose him came within something like
that's true
48 hours of her last visit to his home and her killing. So I think it's quite possible that the decision to kill her came in response to those threats to.
Definitely. That's all evidence right there. The last 48 hours she texted you and said what she said, and then she came to your crib and you killed her. Burn his ass.
Expose him, those threats to his career. And that's, again, why the LADA's office has put the special circumstance allegation that this was done to kill a witness and for financial gain. The financial gain in this case being his career. and frankly have not seen these allegations used in this way. Usually murder for financial gain, we think about murder for hire or a hitman,
Right.
killing of a witness. We think about it in terms of organized crime and gang cases where a person is already named as a witness in a case that's already ongoing. In this case, the specifics are a little bit different, but the theory, I think, holds.
And lying in wait, right? So these special circumstances allegations basically get you a higher penalty if he's convicted of murder. You're talking life in prison without the possibility of parole, possibly the death penalty, although there is a moratorium on executions in California. Going back to how they might be able to track him to Santa Barbara, there is another post, and I talked about this a little bit, but there's another post by Steve, and this one is actually accompanied by video of him driving, and it says, "One may wonder how David could be so dumb to leave his cell phone on all 3 times he came out to SR 154 in Santa Barbara, the same road Celeste's passport was found. Maybe he didn't bring the phone, but didn't think about the license plate reader." This goes to a question, how can they track him, Matt? And how accurate is that data? Is this something that can be questioned by defense attorneys successfully at trial? Or in your experience, if you're talking about cell phone records, license plate readers, that becomes very, very difficult for defense attorneys to argue about the
So this nigga had his phone on the whole time. Like the whole time he was doing all of this, them towers was pinging man. Yeah, and I think, and it's almost like he wanted to get caught though. Like they said he was doing it for financial gain. So if anybody's doing it for financial gain, they gonna go to the extreme, right? I think he wanted to get back. Now everybody talking about him.
Stupid.
liability, the accuracy of that data.
It's pretty hard to argue with geolocation data, especially if you've got multiple sources of data. It's quite likely, because this is not a sophisticated offender, that he didn't think about leaving his phone behind. And if he brought his phone with him, that can be tracked very precisely. Even when the phone is off, there's usually some limited geolocation data available with most smartphones. That's how your Find My Phone app works, even if your phone's turned off or the battery's died. As to the traffic cameras, that's a very good source of evidence. It would be interesting to see who manages those traffic cameras. Flock, which is the big company, typically only keeps that data for about 30 days, but they contract with different localities and law enforcement agencies, and so that can be extended. It would be unusual to me if that data was available 6 or so months later, which would be the earliest that an investigation could have started, because they didn't find poor Celeste until September. Traffic cameras are a possibility. I think more likely we're talking about geolocation data through the phone, and quite possibly through the Tesla as well.
Stupid.
Next up, timeline. So from when prosecutors claim she was killed on April 23rd to his arrest, to the charging, it's about a year, right? So Steve posts this. This is, again, an update. Can't stop thinking about the timeline of the murder of Celeste Rivas Hernandez as put forward in the pretrial brief. Could the 10:30 p.m. "Where are you" text messages actually be real and not a staged alibi? Would Celeste have walked away after an argument upon arriving in the Uber? Maybe those texts from David asking where she was were real, and after he didn't receive a response, he went looking for her, found her, and they ended up driving to Santa Barbara County where the killing actually occurred. He could have shut her phone off when finding her. In that scenario, her body could have remained along SR 154 for the roughly 12 days until the pool, body bag, laundry bags, and chainsaws were ordered and delivered May 1st and May 5th. It is also worth noting that the pool was ordered after her death, meaning it would not have contained blood from the actual killing. The DA's version of events is a very compressed timeline. Arrival at 10:10 p.m., a fatal stabbing, and then being composed enough to send an alibi text by 10:30 p.m. That is a 20-minute window. They also claim the trip to Santa Barbara that evening was to start disposing of evidence. However, the evidence had not even been purchased yet. The pool, chainsaw, shovel, and other items had not even been ordered at the time of the first Santa Barbara trip.
Crazy.
There's also the question of storing a body.
Bro, a fucking chainsaw? A pool? Come on, bro. A chainsaw? Nah,
at his
bro.
manager Josh Marshall's rental house for 12 days while waiting for tools, with nearby neighbors and decomposition odors likely becoming noticeable within a few days. All while David was out of town and having to trust that nobody would enter a house that wasn't even leased to him. None of this changes the central point that David is responsible. He killed Celeste. That I am certain of. Like I said, the DA is likely correct in their theory. They're working with all the evidence. Hashtag David, hashtag Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Again, that is Steve's perspective, Steve's opinion on it. But he does raise interesting questions there, right?
Yeah, and again, it's certainly possible. I did read that, and I think Steve's theory or alternate theory, has some merit. His statement about the compressed timeline, I think, is less salient if you decide that David had made up his mind to kill Celeste at the time that he lured her to his home. I think if he'd already made up his mind in the days or hours prior to inviting her over, the fact that he staged the phone calls and made the trip to Santa Barbara so quickly thereafter makes more sense. Steve's right that a lot of the evidence in this case had not yet come into David's possession, but there would have been Celeste's passport card, it could have involved her phone, and it could have been a trip to dispose of the murder weapon. So all of those items would be things that David might want to get rid of as soon as possible. As to the idea that she was killed out in Santa Barbara, that's certainly possible. I would be wondering about evidence of a struggle or blood inside the Tesla. That would require David then, after killing her in Santa Barbara, to put her body in his car and drive it 100 or so miles back to Los Angeles, which would be a very risky thing for him to do, whether he did it immediately afterwards or 2 weeks later. So possible, yes, but as Steve said, the LADA and the LAPD are the ones who are working with all the evidence, and they seem to believe that the evidence shows she was lured to his home to be murdered there.
And risky, I mean, it's also risky allegedly murdering somebody in this house that he was leasing, right? So it does become a question too. Here's another update that I want to talk about, another aspect. So prior investigation and her movements. So this court paperwork, this brief, reveals that investigators had apparently been looking into David for quite some time. Not about Celeste killing, but about this apparent relationship. Remember, he is charged with having an illegal sexual relationship. So the filing says detectives learned the victim had been reported missing to the Riverside County Sheriff's Department by her family, who live in Lake Elsinore, in February and April 2024. RSSD telephonically contacted defendant on February 17, 2024, and after they identified a phone number in the victim's phone records that belonged to him. During the call, defendant claimed he had spoken to the victim last on February 13th or 14th, 2024, but stated he was unaware she was a minor or that she had been reported missing. RCSD advised him that Los Angeles Sheriff's Department deputies would be coming to his home. On that day, defendant was living at 804 North Doheny Place in West Hollywood. RCSD requested that LASD conduct a welfare check at defendant's home. LASD deputies went to defendant's home that night at 8:15 p.m. and informed him the victim was a 13-year-old runaway. Defendant again claimed he was unaware she was a minor and he had only met the victim once in person in November 2023. However, defendant showed deputies a yearbook photo of the victim he had on his cell phone. Although he claimed to be unaware of where the victim was at the time, she returned home 2 days later. Despite being informed by law enforcement the victim was only 13, defendant continued to pursue her. After the victim returned home in February 2024, her parents took her cell phone away. Defendant drove to Lake Elsinore and paid a junior high school student in the victim's class $1,000 to give the victim a cell phone defendant purchased so they could stay in contact. Throughout 2024, the victim spent a significant amount of time with defendant, including summer weekends at his home in the Hollywood Hills and traveling with him to Las Vegas, London, and Texas to meet his family. I say all that. Here are the updates. Steve, back to Steve, posts this. Minors such as Celeste Rivas Hernandez cannot just travel to London without consent. Here are the laws in the UK about minors traveling with an adult that is not their parent. U.S. citizens do need an ETA visa to travel to or through the UK. You'll need to show that your parent or guardian consents to your travel and accommodation arrangements. If you do have to apply for a standard visitor visa, you'll need to identify the adult traveling with you in your visa application. If the person you're traveling with is not your parent, you'll need to provide specific information about them in your application. You can identify up to 2 adults in your visa application. Their names will appear on your visa. The adult can apply for a visa at the same time, but you must each complete separate applications. Matt, over to you. I don't know the specifics of this. I don't know if you know differently. But he does raise questions about how she would be able to travel with David and who knew what.
And there's a lot that we still don't know and that may still be unknown to the investigation as well. The kind of subtext of this that concerns me, and I saw other comments about whether or not David provided money to Celeste's family. For a child sex predator to ingratiate himself with the families of their victims, it's not unusual, it's part of the MO. And that doesn't put blame on the families. The only person to blame for what happened to Celeste, both her sexual abuse and her murder, is David Burke, at least as far as the evidence shows at this point. So what the family knew, what the family did, try to do, was unable to do to stop this relationship with David, there's a lot that we don't know there.
Well, can I just jump in, because this is part of the other update? Celeste's father spoke out. We know the family has been relatively silent during this whole process, understandably so. But this was reported by TMZ that Celeste's father, Jesus Rivas, through the family attorney, Patrick Steinfeld, said, quote, "I never had any contact with this guy, and we haven't received any money from him or anyone in his family." Now, on my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, I spoke to Lauren Conlin, a columnist for Los Angeles Magazine. She's been looking into this case. She said these rumors about the money came from posts on Reddit that originated from Celeste's hometown of Lake Elsinore. And she added on my show, "This family is going through something so horrific and so tragic that no family should have to go through. We're living in this crazy society where we blame the victim's family. And at this point, we just don't know enough." Matt, back to you. People will still look at this and say, how is it possible that the family never met him or didn't know him or he didn't know him? Back to you.
Again, it would be absolutely normal and natural for a predator to ingratiate himself with the family of his victim. We don't know how or to what degree this happened in this case, but that puts blame on the predator and not on the family. David was a very powerful, glamorous, wealthy, successful artist. This is a family that by all accounts was struggling to get by in a kind of remote, distant, dusty corner of Southern California. The power dynamic there is overwhelming. The power over a child as young as 11 when this relationship started, and the power over a family of limited means trying to compete with this glamorous, successful, wealthy guy. Clearly, they took the phone away from her because
nigga's a fucking clown. That's what he is. You were a clown.
There was something they objected to, something they were trying to keep from happening. He traveled 70 miles and gave $1,000 to a middle school kid to get her another phone. Whatever they tried to forbid, whether it was, judging.
Man, that's it, man. That's all I'm gonna do on this wild cornball dude, man. Y'all make sure y'all like, comment, and subscribe, man. Y'all tell me what this freak wild goofy gonna get. MONICELLO'S reactions, man. Make sure y'all subscribe. I'm out, man. Wicked ass dude. Look at this dude.